Hello, kings, queens, beautiful people who watch this channel. This is a part two to the sort of racism and things I've learned as I've grown up. Now, like I was saying, with stereotypes with racism doesn't exist in just one form. It's not purely that I think you're better or inferior, that is a large part of it. It can exist in many forms, even like preconceptions, stereotypes, the way we treat other people. Because the thing is, like, right, obviously nobody wants to think they can be a bad person or have negative aspects to themselves. I come from the more point of view that everyone has a capacity for good and bad. It's just which side you tend to express more of, and that we have a capacity to be better people. We're all flawed, basically, is what I'm trying to say, and we can all always do better. It sounds very religious, but that's the general viewpoint I tend to take. But I get it because the thing is, like, most people, like I said, most of us would like think we're good people, and most people tend to, generally in the eyes of the law, most of us tend to be law-abiding citizens who don't break the law, and everyone's treated equally under the law. Or if you're taking the more Christian perspective, we're all treated the same under God's eyes. And the fact and reality of life is that's not always the case, as I've mentioned. So going back to a few things, when I was saying when people care about certain issues when it concerns themselves or people they care about, that's always been somewhat true, to be fair. I can't even deny that. Like, we tend to. Like, I remember a few years back, and it was awful. I remember I was like, oh my god, this is terrible when it happened, right? Because all loss of life is always a terrible thing, right? When there was that attack at the football stadium in France, right? Loads of things happened at the exact same time as that incident in France, where 120 people died. But the thing is, it's like, and it was tragic. It was really tragic, right? I think it's just like the thing is we paid attention to that, but I didn't even know until later, like the day before, there'd been a suicide bombing in Lebanon, or there had been something that happened in Mexico as well, and that there was a mini earthquake in Japan. Though I know they're kind of used to that in Japan, but I never realized like the one I always remembered was the France one. I didn't even really think about the other ones that happened, but I understand because for most people, France isn't that far from me. I only live in Ireland. It's like not that far of a flight, but we didn't really think about the other ones because they're not as near to us, or we had no reason to be as concerned about it. I guess that's always been true, but it's not to say one tragedy is better or worse. They're all tragic, but media in itself tends to be biased anyway, so I don't really tend to have that much of a hope for it when it comes to covering any sort of issue, be it as tragic as that or as happy, even if it's happy news. That's always been the case when it comes to the media. Because you have to understand this when it comes to even things like history. I'm a big lover of history, right? Obviously, most people here would be familiar with maybe a bit of American history, British, maybe a bit of British. Like, most of the history we did in school was like Irish history and Northern Irish history and a bit of like we did mostly the 20th century for our course because history's so broad, like you have to limit, there's only so much you can study. So like we mostly did a bit of American history, and the only time we ever touched like Asia, Africa, or any of those other places, if it was in relation to the Cold War. So we only did really like the Korean and Vietnam and maybe a bit of Japan when it was World War II, but that was the extent of it. So, like, when it comes to learning about history of other places, most of it I had to get either from the internet or people who are around during that time. You know what I mean? So that's another factor when it comes to these sort of things, and like a bit of Egyptian history, but I didn't really do that in the course. You see, so that's a factor when it comes to people wondering why certain issues are the way they are. Because history is not just to know how things came to be, it's also hopefully a way we learn not to do certain things or how much we progressed as a society. However, there is the saying history repeats itself, so maybe in a lot of respects we don't learn from history, and that's why the same stuff ends up sort of happening again and again. Like the saying goes, the game's the same, but the players change, so to speak. So that's the unfortunate truth. But I also think there's been a change in the world, like I said. Most of us notice we're living in a great age of technology and even a more globalized world than ever before. Like, we're more used to convenience and instant everything now than we would have been years ago. Like, I can literally speak to anyone across the world now through like as long as you have a decent internet connection and a decent an app of sorts. You have Line, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have Snapchat. Even some of the people who watch me are from other countries. You know what I mean? So like you have access to literally the whole world at your fingertips. More people are dating. About a fifth, I think the study says there's a fifth of people who are dating or married now who met online. More people are kind of mixing and integrating with one another. The world's changed a lot from what it was 30 20, even heck, 50 years ago. So that's one thing. So it's definitely a change, and some people might be a bit like taken aback by this. Some people might see it as a good or bad thing, depending on your point of view. Now, I think there is strength in learning from others because the more we cooperate, the better place this world will be. But at the same time, culture exchange can be helpful, and you can learn something from one another. And I tend to learn more when I speak to other people who aren't the same as me. You know what I mean? That's kind of the whole idea. But also, I began to realize there's things I grew up with that maybe, again, I didn't really think maybe other people didn't grow up with as such, unless they also had very traditional parents like myself. I didn't grow up with, like, say, for example, some of the food I ate growing up would have been different because obviously my family's originally Zimbabwean, so like something like sadza and some meat and okra, like that sounds yum to me. Other people, they'd be like, what is that? You know what I mean? But that's a small example. Food, the fact my family, well, some of my family's more Christian. Like, well, to be fair, most people with Zimbabwean heritage tend to be Christian anyway, so it's not that surprising. And I was Methodist as well, which is sort of one of the Protestant branches of Christianity. The thing is, Protestant here tends to be Anglican, so like Church of England, the King's Church, like the Queen's Church. And there was that element. Like, I was more used to going to church every single week, whereas some of my classmates, like, they only went to church maybe Christmas, Easter, and the occasional time with their parents. But the only other time they would go, they'd mostly do communions and confirmations for the money. Like, they never really did it because, oh, I really believe this is my faith. Nah, they want a down payment of at least 20. They're making their goddamn communion and confirmation. They need that cash. So that was the thing. I guess it's more of a religious thing than a cultural thing, but it's strange. I guess the other thing is because, like I said, my family would have been a bit more traditional in that respect. Even when it comes to guests and stuff. Though I know some people are like this, but it's always the case because I guess it tends to be more traditional and humanistic in nature. You care for the well-being of a person, even if you're not the best of friends with them. So, say for example, when I brought my boyfriend, I said, "Oh, I have a partner or whatever." Like my external family's like, "Bring him." Yes, bring them. Like, they were happy and stuff. Outside the fact they just met somebody and all that jazz. You care for the well-being of others. Just bring them. Come, just bring them. And then whatever happens there. But they're like small examples, I guess, to kind of illustrate a further point. There is sometimes cultural differences. Some are good and some are bad. you know? And then kind of jumping off this into this sort of topic to do with colorism, even though I've covered it before, I'll try to link that video below if I can. The thing is, there is a difference between most people trying to get a tan now and people who try to lighten their skin in the past. Like, obviously, it all has to do with beauty standards, and the thing is, with beauty standards, they change, whether it's in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. Like, I think that's one thing that definitely changed as I got older. Like, yeah, people were getting tabs when I was in secondary school and younger, and maybe a bit younger. But like, say for example, right, the amount of people I've heard on videos or actually spoken to who are either mixed race or my shade or even darker than my shade, who were like, yo, I felt I was ugly when I was younger because of my skin. I felt like I was like, this, that, and the other, and I tried to lighten my skin or appear, as, classically, stereotypically white as humanly possible to be seen as pretty and all this stuff. But eventually I learned to embrace my skin and hair color and all this stuff. And the saddest part about all this is that most of these women, because I can't really speak for the men, when I look at them, I'm like, but you're gorgeous. They're either very average to gorgeous looking women, but the thing is they've internalized all that negative messaging about their skin color and all that sort of stuff that they feel like they're ugly and their skin's the problem. And I'm like, that ain't the case, sis. Like, most people are trying to get, like, I said this to one girl I knew, I was like, nah, you should be like proud of that because a lot of people are trying to get a tan now or a big bush or big lips. I don't actually think my lips are that big. I've been told I have big lips. I don't know. But yeah, it's been this weird sort of flip around now. I don't know whether this is due to the Kardashians or just K-pop becoming more popular or certain features we associate with black people getting more popular or what the fuck's the case. But like, yeah, no, now everybody's trying to get like big butts and big lips and all this other stuff. And I'm just sort of there like, if I knew this was going to get popular when I was younger, I would have capitalized on this so fast. Like, I know it sounds terrible, but I would have, you know? And it's strange when I look at it now, because like the whole sort of being tan thing, like these are all symbolizers of class. So back in the day, early 20th century, people now, traveling started becoming a thing because, more money, you're more able to do certain things, going on holiday, especially to a hot country, holiday, people don't often think of it like this, but a holiday is a signifier of class because usually being able to go on holiday means you actually have money to do something fun and go somewhere else. You know what I mean? So, when they go to another country, they get a bit of color. It's like, oh, it symbolizes your class because you have a bit of money because you can get a little bit of color there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what it initially started out as. Now, some people obviously do it for an aesthetic. They think looking exotic or somewhat tan is like beautiful and fair. I mean, you want to go get tan, you go get a tan. But yeah, it's a strange flip around I've noticed now. I mean, it's good and bad in a lot of ways. Like, I don't want anyone to take the tanning to an extreme, and I wish skin lightening was completely banned. Like, there's still some countries it exists in, which is kind of depressing, but oh, what can you do? But I'm just hoping this generation, like I said, we change that. And saying that, I'm gonna make a part three to this video.